listener production.
I'm automotive commentator and journalist Greg Rust, and this is Rusty's Garage.
For this episode, I'm at home. It's around 9 o'clock at night, and my guest is in the UK having an early morning cuppa. He's doing a round of media interviews as a part of the announcement that Damon Hill will join the Channel 10 team for their coverage of the 2023 Formula One Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. Good get. And I'm grateful to my old network family for their help in teeing this one up. The 1996 world champion is also on the exclusive Albert Park winners list as we celebrate 70 years of GP racing there this year. He's been something of a constant in the paddock since he retired from driving, working with the Sky F1 broadcast team, bringing a relaxed style but an intuitive understanding of the drivers and what makes them tick. Damon was 15 when his legendary father, Graham Hill, a two-time world champion, was tragically killed in a plane crash. Graham and many of the big names of that era would regularly come to Australia and New Zealand over summer for the Tasman series. It was a chapter that many listeners here remember fondly. Graham had raced for iconic teams back then, and who knows, we may now look at his own operation in the same way we appreciate, say, the history of McLaren or Williams had he sadly not gone to the racetrack upstairs. Graham ran the London Rowing Club colours on his trademark helmet, and Damon adopted the same inspiration. Until Nico Rosberg in 2016, Damon was the only driver to emulate his father and also win a world title in Formula One. He's driven lots of different things, from Le Mans to touring cars and several junior categories and open wheels. He was a late bloomer, late to make the switch to cars, something we're very unlikely to see again. That's because he actually started out on bikes and still loves them. Now, because of his busy round of commitments, we recorded just after round 2 in Saudi Arabia. The hour we had set aside had to be cut short. Don't worry, we'll try and catch up with him again for a part 2 at some stage. I was also conscious of the many pods that he's done, including F1 Nation with Natalie Pinkham and fellow 10 recruit Tom Clarkson, so I tried to ask a few different things. And I was able to put a few of the questions viewers and listeners had kindly sent in to him, and to look ahead to the Aussie race briefly too. And there's a bit of fun in there, a bit of insight on Murray Walker and Barry Sheene. I hope you enjoy it. How did the opportunity for you to first kind of work in the media really come about, and how did you find it early on?
It was very strange. Because you still think of yourself as a racing driver. And I hadn't realised no one else thought of me as a racing driver anymore. so especially the people I was working for, and they'd ask me a question. They'd say, Damon, you raced at this circuit. What do you remember? And I'd say, I don't remember anything. I've forgotten. And I'd get a voice in my ear from the producer saying, we're paying you to remember.
People have, this is kind of a crazy left of field question, but people have fondly remembered the great Pizza Hut ad that you did with Murray Walker in 96. Still kind of funny now.
And Damon Hill leads into the first bend.
Murray.
There's been a shunt. It's Hill.
Murray, we're just out for a quiet pizza. Stop commentating.
Sorry.
We'll have a pepperoni, please.
And here comes the pasta.
It's a pizza, Murray.
Hill's going for it. And he's spun his pizza through 180 degrees.
Pepperoni and cheese stuffed crust from Pizza Hut. It'll turn around the way you look at pizza.
And Hill finishes second again.
Watch it, Baldy.
Have you got some recollections of that? I mean, he was fabulous, the late great man, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was a professional. He was an absolute consummate professional. He knew his business. He knew, that it's show, and he had this voice that he could project, which was astonishing. When you're there in the presence of the man, when he did his voice, it really kind of knocked you over. It was like a kind of physical force rather than just a sound. And but we did the commercial it was a very, very well-known film director, so they'd spent a lot of money on it, and we went to I think I can't remember where it's Pinewood or somewhere around here, you know, where all the film studios, the famous film studios were. And they had the big setup, you know, and the big hangar and the lights, and there was hundreds of people. And he gave me my simple acting role. You know, I had to act, which of course, you know, anyone seen me act will know I'm absolutely pants at that. So, but they managed to make it easy for me. But what I had to do was bite into this deep crust pizza that probably other pizza companies also make. But anyway, and then do it over and over again. So that meant you have to spit it out. So I basically had to bite into one of those pizzas, hold it in my mouth, and then spit it into a bucket about 20 times. And so I came away smelling of the delicious, spicy and cheesy pizza for many days afterwards.
His words in the broadcast, the commentary of your title-winning race in 96 were iconic. I think he said, "I've got to stop because I've got a lump in my throat." Damon, that is 27 years ago now. For me and for many listeners, it seems like yesterday. Statistically, a very rare thing, too, in the sport because your dad had been a world champion too. Jubilation, exhaustion, relief, kind of what impact did it have on you when you crossed the line?
Relief, I think, mostly because I was exhausted. You know, I hadn't slept for days. You know, it was just you lie down in your little tiny room in Suzuka in the Circuit Hotel, and every room seems to have a mosquito in it, and you just can't rest. And then you wake up and you get to the circuit. And the problem is you get in the car, and of course it's lovely and cozy in there. And if you're not careful, you can almost fall asleep. But, you know, not this time. You have to cross the line first. But once that was done, yeah, massive relief to have got that one in the bag.
You came back too from a difficult, I think you described it to our buddy Tom Clarkson as a kind of torrid year in 95. You say you were a more complete driver in 96. Kind of in what way? In the car and out of the car too, weren't you?
Yeah, I had to go and think about it, lick my wounds really. I got a total pasting by Michael, and he made me look a chump. And so, you know, and partly he was right, you know, because I did make some mistakes and I went about it the wrong way. And I think I knew that there was some other aspect to this game that I hadn't understood. And it was how you conduct yourself. I thought I could just walk in and do my job, you know, but I hadn't really appreciated how much you affect everyone around you. I think I was a reasonably quiet person or shy-ish person. I'm not someone who dominates the room when I walk in, you know, so I'm quite happy to stand by the wall and watch everyone else for a bit. But, you know, when you're fighting for a world championship, you're the attention. You know, the press want to know, they want to talk to you, and I didn't quite know how to deal with all of that. So I got some very good advice from a woman who coached politicians, and her name was Mary Spillane, and she just came over to my house in Ireland and sat me down after the season. I said, "What?" And I was pouring my heart out to her, and she said, "Stop, save it for the book." You know, okay. And absolutely stopped me in my tracks. You know, I thought people were interested in what I was thinking and feeling, and she was basically saying, you don't give them stuff.
Not now, anyway.
They can use it against you. Not now, anyway. Exactly. This is you're in the thick of a battle, and this is propaganda as much as anything. It's a propaganda war. You've got to have a wall around you, and you've got to be able to fight and defend your territory. You know, when you're just walking about, let alone on the track. The track she couldn't help me with, but the off-track stuff she helped me with, and that's why I went in with a much better attitude, I think, in '96. But I think it illustrates to people listening that sport is a whole suite of skills that you need to develop. And nowadays drivers are much better prepared. You know, the young guys that come into the sport, they've done all this media training. They've done all the physio training. I was on my own. In those days, you didn't have any of that. You just had to do it yourself. So, yeah.
Sage advice for some young racers or emerging racers that will be listening. And where you kind of led to there was, I mean, it's such a politically charged game too. I mean, a piranha club, as it's obviously been described. When did the brutality of that whole thing sink in for you? I mean, you'd grown up around aspects of it with your own family and so on. And how did you kind of cope with that? Because some people, Damon, thrive on that sort of political stuff and others avoid it at all costs, don't they?
They do. Some people seem to rise up on animosity. I mean, someone like Nigel, maybe Ayrton. Some drivers used to like it. I mean, Alan Jones was a pretty tough character when he was driving as well. So, they like that friction. And, I think some people also, the team bosses, used to like their drivers being a little bit on edge and sometimes at each other's throat, sometimes quite literally, within the team. So, they thought that was a good sign because they thought these guys are going to fight harder. I just watched the Peroni Villeneuve film, which just come out.
Is that good?
It's about that and how badly wrong it can go. It is very good. It's very upsetting in some ways to watch because it had tragic consequences. But it's about the rivalries, but it's also about undisciplined competitiveness. So it's we're all competitive. We all understand. And in Saudi, you saw Max sort of pouting, it looked like, and looking a bit forlorn because he'd come second. He's not there to come second. He got beaten by his teammate. He doesn't like it. And it's how you cope with these moments and how you respond. And some people turn it into a personal thing. And we saw that with Senna and Prost. And it becomes, it's thrilling to watch, but it's ugly. It's the only thing you can say. It's not a pretty sight when you see two people hating each other.
Not at all. You drove for some of motorsport's biggest names, Sir Frank Williams, Patrick Head, throw in Tom Walkinshaw, Eddie Jordan in there. They're all really different human beings. In a word or two, what would they like to work with and how different were their kind of operating styles?
Very different. It's surprising, really, how different they were. And I think it's also true of drivers. You can't say, this is the kind of personality you need, or this is the kind of approach you need. There's got to be some fundamental common trait, but everyone does it their own different way. And I was asked this question actually recently, and my answer was someone was asking, what is the right model to follow? And I say you have to follow your own model. It's not if you try and copy someone else, you can't do it. But how do you compare Eddie Jordan to Ron Dennis? Well, the only thing you'd say is that Ron Dennis was very successful. Eddie Jordan was quite successful, but not in the same way. They were very different. Frank Williams, totally different. Dedicated, of course, absolutely dedicated to the extent of exclusion of everything else in their lives. And Toto Wolff and Christian Horner, famously very different individuals. And they seem to, as the Drive to Survive series has shown, I don't know if anyone's watched that, but it's quite different personalities, and they seem also slightly obsessed with beating the other one as well. So these things are interesting intrapersonal relationship issues that we like watching, don't we?
I feel like that aspect for the broadcast is something that you I think you even told Tom this at one point, that you understand how drivers are kind of programmed or their personality makeup, and your observations are still obviously very good in that regard. Is that something that you enjoy, Damon?
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand the world. It seems to be made up of slightly deranged people making very big decisions
exactly.
and affecting the rest of us. So I think like everyone, I'm trying to work out how we either stop them or get better as people. Yeah,
your late dad Graham was a legend. You've got the chance, so there'll be people listening to the podcast that enjoy the aspect of the cool old cars from that era. People can find some of the videos online where you've had the chance to drive them. There is actually a Formula 2 car in Australia, a Brabham, a 1965 car that your dad won, I think, in Spain in 66 with, that is for sale at the moment for about nearly about $500,000 Australian dollars. But I think you drove the 1962 BRM, the Lotus at Goodwood, for example. Did you enjoy that? And is there one that you've had a soft spot for? Was it a special moment to drive that?
I think it was quite in my own car, particularly. I drove the car I won the championship in, and when I got the opportunity to get back in it, because I got out of it in 1996 and never went back to Williams because Frank had decided he wanted to give me my freedom, and so I got back in this car, and it all came back to me. It was very emotional, but I've driven, as you said, a lot of my dad's cars. I think I've got over that emotional feeling, but I have driven his championship car, which was did more than one season. It was the Lotus 49, the gold leaf one, the one that was one of the first cars to be sponsored, a very pretty looking car. And I did get the sense, oh my God, this is what he did for a living, one of these, in the environment that he was in, and hearing the same Ford DFV engine noise, and you get some a bit of insight into how brave they were. I mean, quite honestly, you had to just disregard the danger. There was just no way you could have done it if you thought about what would happen. You just wouldn't get anywhere. So they were very, very brave. But quite nice cars to drive as well, quite interesting cars to drive because they drifted and you had too much power and not enough grip. And so maybe a bit more fun to drive than these cars.
Yeah. I think you shared a great pic of him recently too. He was on the desk was covered in paperwork, on the phone, maybe feet up on the desk. What sort of traits can you remember of him, and perhaps did you take any of those into your own career?
Well, imagine a world where you're traveling all over the place, having to arrange flights, having to arrange hotels, having to arrange different currencies, having to organize a race team, and all you have is a phone that's connected by a cable, okay, to the wall, okay, and letters. You can post a letter, but it will arrive like a week later.
No email.
I mean, how did they do it? So he was the most extraordinarily busy man, and it was all done with a diary. A little, you'd lose your diary, you're absolutely screwed. So all your phone numbers are in there. So, but he went everywhere, and the Motorsport magazine a while back did a celebratory what's it called? Tribute to him, and someone had written, I think it was Quentin Spurring, and had made a list of all the tracks he'd driven in and all the cars around the world, and you just think it's not physically possible to have done it. I mean, he was everywhere in the world. He'd driven and he'd raced different cars. My God. And that doesn't include all the after dinner speeches and all the other things he did. So mad. No wonder his desk was a mess. I don't know how he coped at all. I mean, my desk is a mess. I mean, but not a patch on his.
You actually started out on two wheels. We get lots of people that love bikes that listen to the podcast as well. I know you still love bikes. I reckon I've been in on a conversation with you and my good mate Darryl Beattie, perhaps at Albert Park, where you were chatting about it. Why did you kind of gravitate to bikes? When and what age did that happen? And what was your first bike, your first motorbike?
Yeah. Well, have you seen Darryl's feet?
Yeah. Yes, I have.
And I remember when I came down and Barry went to stay with Barry, and Barry said, "I'll go out. Mick Doohan will take you out, and Darryl will go on the boat and stuff." And they got their shorts on, and you look at their legs and you think, "I'm glad I gave up the bike racing."
Right, exactly. My daughter at a very young age saw what was left of his foot, and she asked me, "Are his toes ever going to grow back, Dad?" And I said, "No, darling. Very, very sadly, they're not." What are you riding nowadays, two-wheel wise?
I'm afraid I'm pedaling my own bike these days. I've gone to sort of mountain biking, and I like to get the exercise. I'm more under my own steam, but it's still the same. It's the same thrill when you come down a mountain on a bicycle. Yeah. Similar, but the motorbiking up. I haven't got a garage, so we keep moving house, and I haven't yet managed to get a garage to fill it up with lovely bikes. But I will do one day.
Good stuff. You mentioned Baz before, and I'm really glad that you did that. He was a special part of our Channel 10 motorsport team in the late 90s and early 2000s. He often comes up, Damon, in conversations on this podcast with the guest. Listeners would love a recollection or two of Baz that you might have. You shared one a minute ago, and there was a common thread here. Am I right in saying you were both good mates with George Harrison from the Beatles too, weren't you?
Yeah, so my story would really be based around '94 when I came down to fight for the title with against Michael Schumacher, and Barry phoned me up and said, I always thought with Barry, there must have been some other reason. Why is Barry Sheen phoning me up? He was probably trying to get some inside story. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh no, we'll come down. We'll pick you up in the helicopter. We'll fly down the coast. And I'm going, okay, I'll go along with this. And so we. I think I got away quite lightly, actually, to be honest with Barry. But you go anywhere near Barry, and you're normally always going to end up in trouble with something. But he bent my ear. We flew from Brisbane down to Adelaide, and he bent my ear in the plane the whole way about how I wasn't getting paid enough. So I'm about to go into a world title fight with my team. And, I should have been focusing and staying out of trouble. Instead, what happened was by the time I got there, I was met by Murray Walker, and Barry had been going on about, Frank's so mean, he needs to pay you more money. So I got off the plane and went, I'm not being paid enough. Something like that. That was like the headline. And by the time I got to the garage, it was all over the papers that, the only thing that I was worried about was money. And I walked in the garage, and Patrick Head was there, and Frank. They were basically didn't talk to me, and I thought, oh dear, I've just pooed in my own nest, and I haven't even got to the race yet. So yeah, lots of good stories about Barry, but he was one of those utterly extraordinary people who, if you don't have a normal education, that's what you get. You get a complete unique individual who had not been brainwashed to think a certain way. He thought laterally. He thought in the way that had freedom of thought, and I think that's why he was interesting.
Great observation. Chaos, always fun, commercially very savvy, very clever man, and much, much missed.
Damon achieved something pretty special by winning a Formula One World Championship like his famous father did. Imagine if Jack Doohan can make it to F1 and win the driver's title. His dad is a legend on two wheels. Mick's a 5-time 500cc world champion who you can also find in the Rusty's Garage library.
The tools took me to those world titles, or took me through sport. I've tried to apply to life after sport, and the same commitment, the same dedication and persistence are the things that I still use, and also try and continually work with trusted people.
Rusty wishes he had a world title. Tell him he's dreaming, Mick. Back to Damon.
Can we bounce through a couple of quick questions that have come through from both 10 viewers and listeners, if you're okay with it? So one here from Paul Hamilton talks about how you had many teammates that were world champions, obviously, Prost, Senna, Mansell, Villeneuve. Who in your mind was there a standout or the best driver among them? And what's the kind of biggest thing you learnt on track and off track from them as a person?
I think I kind of alluded to this before a little bit, which is that everyone's got their own style and their own way of doing what they do. Alain Prost very different to Nigel Mansell and Ayrton Senna, but I think I learned a lot. I learned most from my dad. I through osmosis, I've adopted his approach to things. I would never say I was like my dad. I think he was a unique person as well. But his determination, he didn't like making excuses. He didn't like to blame the world for things going wrong. He just thought, well, there's something that could be done by me to make things better for me and my dear ones. So that's the way he approached things, and he was very positive, very up individual. I think they're all in a similar vein. They don't dwell on their misfortune, and that's something that's interesting about them. Other than that, they work hard, so they just are driven. They're driven a little bit. Sometimes they're driven to the point of making themselves unhappy. That can be a mistake. So You have to watch that sort of being obsessed with one thing, winning in Formula One. It's important that for the task in hand, but it's not everything.
Saren asks your first impressions of the Williams active suspension car when you drove it for the first time in testing.
Yeah, very strange. It used to do this thing. They used to. It was full of hydraulics. So basically, hydraulics is a liquid, and it sometimes gets bubbles in it. So they have to kind of bleed it through, and it does this. It used to go through this routine in the garage, which made it look like it was doing press ups. It was like it was breathing. It literally was like a machine. It was like Terminator. It would sit there in the garage, sort of with living on its own. It would go up and down and do this kind of weird exercise routine before you got in it. And then when you drove it, it was it could do anything. You could set it up in any way you liked, which in some ways is not a good thing, because given infinite options, which one do you want? So it was a bit of a head scratcher at first, but it was a very competitive car. So I enjoyed my time with that car. It was good, but it was, it's a bit of an unfair advantage, really.
Phil in New Zealand, do you miss the sound of V12, V10 engines?
I do. I really like the V10. I have V12 as well, but I drove the McLaren MP46, was it? And the V12 one in Suzuka, the Honda engine thing. Oh my God, that is a beast. I mean, the one that Senna and who was it? Berger was racing that one. Oh my God, it was absolutely terrifying. It's a terrifying noise it made, but it was glorious, fantastic.
Michael Shaw, he says, serious question. I'd like to know more about the 1992 season and what was left of the Brabham. What was it like in a team in so much kind of trouble, and did it help anyway at all when you were still testing for Williams and bound for them ultimately?
Yeah, because I thought it's no good just being a test driver. You've got to be out there in the competition. So I spoke with Patrick Head and said, I need to get some track time, because it's not just about being able to drive. It's about all the other stuff that happens. So going to the drivers' briefings, meeting the people at the circuit, talking to the press, all these things. You get a chance if you're a competitor. So it gave me an opportunity to show what I could do, and I got lapped 6 times, I think, by Nigel Mansell in the British Grand Prix in '92. But at least I saw him anyway. I was in the same race, so he gave me some experience, and I think it was a bit of a shame that it was a team that was in massive decline and ultimately closed. I've been in quite a few teams that I've actually closed, so I'm sure it's not me, but
no.
Sometimes it's the dreg opportunity is the only one available, so I had to grab it.
One here from Brendan Costigan. After leaving Williams, did you have offers to go elsewhere, or was Arrows the only option? And how kind of frustrating was that, being the reigning world champion, not being able to kind of defend that title given the car you're in? And I think you part answered this in a pod chat you did actually with Tom. Was there not a bit of conversation around perhaps Stewart Grand Prix and a few others? There was a bit of chat, wasn't there?
Yes, Stuart wanted me to go, but I just thought this is a brand new team. There's no way of knowing where it's going and what state it's in. And I'm not sure. I keep getting confused whether that was for 98 or 97. So I won in 96, and I had to go and find a team to drive for. And the only one I could get for a 1-year contract, the whole ambition was to get into McLaren for 98. Because Adrian had left Williams and was so his first car would be the 98 car. So I had to fill my time, in 97, I had to find something I could drive, but everyone else wanted a 2-year deal. So I think Sauber wanted me to drive for them, and Prost maybe.
But you wanted 1 year,
the only people who could give me one deal. Yeah, so I got a 1-year deal with Tom Walkinshaw at Arrows, and I thought, if this works out, great. If it doesn't, I will work on getting in with McLaren, but sadly that didn't work, because Ron made me an offer that was so overwhelmingly unattractive that I put the phone down on it.
Wow.
maybe a rush of blood to the head, but might live to. I live to regret that one.
No. Couple to finish here now. Just as we look ahead to Albert Park, where you're a winner, of course, in 1996. It's 70 years of Grand Prix racing that we're celebrating this year at Albert Park. Can anybody catch those Red Bulls? That is one very quick car, Damon.
It is. Can anyone catch them? They've got this cost cap thing, which means it gets increasingly difficult for them to improve over the season. Some other teams are going to have to go absolutely flat out to catch them. They've got such a huge advantage. I think half the season will be gone by the time that people catch up. So we're praying that Sergio Perez finds inspiration. Maybe he needs some divine intervention a little bit. But they're very devout Catholics in Mexico, so I think if they get the whole of Mexico praying for him, then he might get some extra help he needs.
What's the feeling as far as Lewis Hamilton is concerned for this year? And will we see him stick around in Formula One a bit longer, try a new challenge in Formula One, or seek new challenges beyond the sport, do you think?
Well, he's taken on quite a lot, it seems, externally, and has been a champion for all sorts of causes which have been very important and very he's been a champion in many other ways other than just driving. So, I think he's disappointed. He's still licking his wounds a little bit from Abu Dhabi in 21. So, but I think there is a chink of light. I thought there was a little bit of a sign of improvement, and in Jeddah. So. We don't know. They could be a little bit better in Melbourne.
Oscar Piastri, what can Aussies hope for, and do we have to bide our time and be a little bit patient? But I think the observation from most is this is a young kid with a bright future.
Yeah, is it the Ashes this year? Is it not the Ashes this year?
In a cricket sense, you're talking about, or
in cricket? In a cricket, I'm just saying we got an England versus Australia in this team now.
Very good.
So,
yes.
I think that as far as McLaren versus the rest of the world, I'm not sure they're going to be. They've got a mountain to climb there, but definitely within the team, he's done a very good job, Oscar, and it'll be fun for him to go to Melbourne as a Melburnian. I think he is. Is that right? Melburnian?
Melburnian, right, correct.
Not a Melbourne.
Well
anyway,
Melburnian. Well done.
So he's a Melburnian, and he's coming home, and he's in Formula One. So congratulations to him.
Can we look now, as we wrap this up, Damon? You've been super good with your time. Sport is next level. They're like rock stars in that paddock in many respects. The whole Drive to Survive effect. I think someone said to me in a meeting ahead of the Australian Grand Prix the other day that up to 30% of the people coming through the turnstiles there are basically going to be first timers to an Australian Grand Prix or a Formula One event. Newcomers, new customers, if you like. And while we ride this wave, this amazing wave, are you kind of mindful that we're going to need to sort of fence in the faithful and what the sport does next to ensure that we stay connected to these fans, that we keep it going?
Do you mean the Drive to Survive kind of effect?
Yeah,
where
or
people
just
expecting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what the sport
does. I don't know what
to
they
continue.
expect. I think it's doing a great job. I think it's shown that we need to open up. It's very difficult with our sport because everything's behind closed doors, and I think that's the point. Nobody wants to reveal information as the season goes forward, and we keep banging on, as you know, journalists, they keep knocking on the door and going, show us more, and everyone's going, no, I'm not showing you that just yet. But the Netflix thing has cracked it open and has been a benefit, I think, in explaining what the emotions are, what the drive is, what the rivalries are in our sport, and how intense the whole thing is, in a way that doesn't come across in the normal broadcasting of it. But we've got that insight now. So I think that's where the fans they've latched onto it. They like the individuals. They're attracted by the personalities as much as by the cars going fast.
3 massive days of coverage on 10 in Australia. You're working with the likes of Alan Jones, who you mentioned before, Tom Clarkson, who you regularly do work with in the paddock anyway, and many more. A good buddy of mine, actually, Richard Crail, who's going to be calling the race. So we wish you all the very best. It's going to be great to see you back down under in Australia, and here's to a cracking remainder of the season.
I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be fun working with an Australian broadcaster at the Australian Grand Prix.
It's going to be terrific. Thank you, mate. Nice to catch up with you.
Thank you.
How good is he? I love how his dad was a huge inspiration for him. For many, losing your father at a critical point in your mid-teens can be a hugely unsettling thing, and yet Damon would go on to emulate that incredibly rare feat of winning one of the most coveted titles in motorsport. Being reunited with his 96 winning car and getting to drive it again. That was a fantastic yarn too. Now, my apologies that this episode is a little shorter than normal. Damon had to bolt, but I'm grateful for the time that he gave us. There were more questions that some of you kindly sent in around things like the rivalry with Michael Schumacher, which is epic, and being at Williams when Ayrton Senna died tragically. I didn't want to hurry those. He has tackled them in other pods. The fantastic thing about Rusty's Garage is there is always time for a part 2 again at some stage down the track when it suits the guest. A quick thanks to the comms team at Channel 10 for their help with this episode. Coverage of the Australian Grand Prix on 10 starts at 11:30 Eastern on Friday, from 10 a.m. on Saturday, and Sunday looks like it's going to be huge from 8:30 a.m. there. Check your guides, as they say. Good on-air lineup too, including my old colleague, the 1980 world champion Alan Jones, who is also in the Rusty's Garage library. We recorded that in the run-up to last year's race. Very frank and funny. Tom Clarkson, who does a fantastic job reporting in the F1 paddock. He's a part of the 10 team too. You'll have a laugh with Tim McDonald from the cheap seats and reserve drivers, and a quick shout out to my mate Richard Crail, who is calling the race again this year. He does a super job. Now keep an eye out in the Rusty's library and on your notifications for The Brief. All parked up there, easy to find, in the same place. It's a short cast looking at things happening currently in the world of motorsport, something new that we're doing, and we're tackling them with people who know. We appreciate all your feedback and reviews on those too. Let your friends know all about it. Enjoy the GP, everybody.